So with patch 14.7, everybody has been talking about everything must go, Yone, and all of the other headaches with encounters. But in the patch, there's actually a lot of still playable lines, a lot of different varieties and ways to play for your outs. So in today's video, we're going to be watching none other than everybody's favorite Mulder, Setsuko, who played a really interesting bruiser line. And I really want to talk about it today because I think it's kind of an odd line that I think not a lot of people are sort of privy or aware of. So today's video, that's what we're going to talk about. Portals were given, radiant items, pot of gold, prismatic party. In general, there is already a lot of variance within set 11. So prismatic party isn't something I really like to lean. So in this scenario, I actually think I would have also leaned pot of gold here. And that's where we're starting. Kog'Maw start as well. Kog'Maw still being a very, very strong start in terms of the current meta. Not like necessarily the greatest. He does really rely on specific items and just having a lot of copies in the early game. So holding Malphite and Kog'Maw here is actually pretty understandable. We do get a Bard as well. Bard is just, again, we talked about this in meta analysis before, but Bard rather, just not that great. In general, there are definitely better Ginsu holders as well. So not a line I would really consider, and I would sell as well just to try to make econ here. Also, it looks like we have a Cog 2. I don't remember the component we got. Cog 2, we have a cloak. If we're dropped like a tier, specifically is like the big one, a tier, a bow, and like belt, obviously for like Nashers and half a blue buff is the ideal, but that's not always going to be the case. We do get dropped to Janna here. We do make the Malphite, so I think Setsuko is kind of already slightly leaning towards Kog'Maw. He didn't hold a Nico though, but no tier start, so it's probably not a Kog'Maw game. 2-1 augments, long distance pals, bruiser crest, and idealism. As we have already spoiled it in the video before, he actually just takes bruiser crest in this spot, which is kind of strange because when you look at his spot, it's not necessarily a great bruiser start. He does have the Kabuko in his shop. He does have like an Aatrox and he gets the Tom Kench, so you can start with 4 bruiser, but it's not necessarily like the most like correct line to take from the spot. And in general, this bruiser crest augment doesn't average very hot on 2-1. Actually, it Masters Plus averages a 4.7. So it's definitely not a line that I think a lot of people are privy to, but I also think it's a line that I don't think a lot of people are aware of / aren't willing to really take. But I think it's something that I would want to discuss today because I think if you know how to navigate the line, I actually think it's not that bad. When it comes to bruiser crest in general, obviously the ideal is you want to play 8 bruiser, but then when it comes to 8 bruiser, how do you exactly play around it? The ideal is Silas 2 obviously as your secondary carry, but who is the primary? And the primary is, I think, at least from what I've seen, is Kayn, but it can be a lot of other units as well. And Kayn doesn't really make a lot of sense, right? Like, you hear Kayn, you're like, why is it Kayn? Like, his ability doesn't scale off HP. Why, you know, like, it's not like he uses HP effectively in any means. Like, so why is it Kayn? The idea is just that Kayn is just one of those units that, like, even just by himself can do really well as long as he's supported. So, for example, in Heavenly Kayn, for example, Heavenly Kayn really supports Kayn because of all the heavenly buffs given to Kayn, right? You're just buffing the shit out of him. When you give a bruiser crest to Kayn, it sort of follows the same line of logic of, okay, with Kayn, you kind of want, with all this extra HP and this insane amount of survivability, and because of the way that his ability works, where he's just able to keep spamming like a Beyblade, he's able to actually perform pretty well on top of the bonus damage that you get out of a bruiser, which I believe works off of the, I believe they do like a percentage of their HP as bonus damage. So I probably should have looked that up actually before I started the video, but regardless, you get the idea. 8 bruiser is still very strong, and if you look up 8 bruiser in the stats, it's still very solid. It's a 3.92 if you manage to get to it, with like a 63% top 4 rate. At least, I believe this is Diamond Plus, at least that I'm looking on the right hand monitor, or sorry, Masters Plus. So, you know, it's still pretty solid. Bruisers as well, it's just also really fun just because, like, it's just seeing a bunch of fucking HP on the board just feels really, really solid. So that is what we'll be, you know, discussing today. Anyways, double cloak with the bruiser crest and a bow. It's kind of hard to play around this, and actually, funny enough, he actually techs into Fortune as well just to get a little bit of extra resources. Fortune is also a really great way to take some, like, you know, suboptimal lines and really taking it up to the next level. So, meaning that basically think of it as like Hearthstone. You just getting that extra bit of juice into your board, and then you can cap out slightly higher. So Setsuko actually rolls a 6 on his fortune die here. So with rolling a 6, we're basically just lose streaking. Like all of fucking early game, we're just lose streaking. I don't know if he's necessarily going to try to hold the Zoe here, just because making 30 makes a little more sense, and trying to hit that Annie, it's not like, it doesn't make a lot of sense either, right? There is some level of argument to be said, hey, maybe we could just play Fortune, and then we could just like hard lose streak all the way down, and then just like try to play for our win out, and just play for 2 bruiser out of our gold augment. But what bruiser do you really want on your endgame board, right? You want to, like, no one really wants to silence on their endgame board. No one really wants like a guy on the endgame board. Sure, you can end with like 4 bruiser or whatever, but like typically it's kind of a lower cap version of whatever. So I mean, you could do it, but the thing is that after rolling a 6, how much are we bleeding, right? We're probably bleeding until what, we bled like 2 already, or 1 or 2 rounds. We're at 80. Another 4, so we're down to like maybe about like 50, 40 HP, right? We can't really push our luck further than that. So it's probably very likely we're just going to be cashing out after the 6, and then we're cashing out like a 30, and that's honestly good enough. Looks like he sends the Evan Shroud here as well, which is totally fine as well. Evan Shroud is pretty solid in this line. Sorry for the trucks. I actually opened my window in the back, so if it's louder in the background, I'm sorry. But Evan Shroud is actually really great, and actually items like Redemption and items like Sterax are actually very prevalent within Bruisers, just because Evan Shroud, obviously, a lot of HP, it's going to survive for a very long time. And also, Redemption is great because Redemption just spreads a lot of that HP healing, and then Sterax because of the math, as we've talked about before with Reimplosion, where she had pointed out that Broseph had calculated, hey, if you have a Sterax instead of a Warmogs on your carries, or sorry, on your tanks, it actually has more HP effectively than Warmogs past a certain threshold. I believe it's like 2,300 HP. But anyways, going into our 3-3 augments, which is kind of weird to say, but Trash's Treasure, Accomplice, and Buried Treasures. I think no one would blame you if you took Accomplice here by any means. But Buried Treasures can also be a very viable option here, just because you just get more and more resources over time. You're going to lose streak throughout Stage 3 anyways. And a lot of the main reason why people don't like Buried Treasures is because of the lack of agency during Stage 3, where you're just waiting for the components to farm. So Buried Treasures makes sense here since we're already playing Fortune. Trash's Treasure doesn't make too much sense just because we're lacking on the items here. But I could totally understand leaning towards Buried or Accomplice. I think both are fine. Accomplice is probably just the much safer option, although it will be a little stronger, so you have to be a little more conscious about your fights, just in case you roll some really strong support augments and then your board is suddenly too strong. He rerolls middle here. He kind of is leaning towards rerolling Buried. No, he ends up not taking, nope, he ends up taking Buried here, which is totally fine. Doesn't end up scouting here and actually ends up fighting this post-up guy, which we'll watch in real time. This is scary as fuck, and one of the reasons why, like, you kind of have to be careful with your augments. You need to pick fast, because if you don't pick fast, you might end up in a situation like this, where you might run into another Fortune player. Now, I will say, Setsuko lucked the fuck out, because as we're watching this fight, as you can kind of tell, it looks like we're still losing regardless. So this post-up guy also didn't do his due diligence, and didn't scout properly, or maybe he did and thought he was going to win, or rather lose to win, but he ended up winning the fight, and then Setsuko is actually still chilling here with 4 bruisers and actually a pretty decent loss. Looks like we'll be farming more components as well. In terms of components we're looking for things like BT, we're looking for things like Sterax, Redemption, again, all these items that are really good with a lot of bonus effective HP. Now, obviously, if we don't play around Kayn, what are our other options, right? We should probably think about that as well. We should probably talk about things like Annie. You can actually use Annie pretty well as well in Bruisers. The only problem is that with Annie, it's hard to justify a Bruiser Crest on Annie just because you lack damage. Even though she uses the HP incredibly well, the problem is that she can't really act as a carry, right? She's just a tank. So the problem is that besides Annie, Kayn is sort of the only really viable option on 8 in terms of like Bruiser Crest holders. Lee Sin would actually be up there too if like Lee Sin was actually a fucking unit, but he hasn't been the whole set yet. So that's not really a choice. It looks like we get the Kayn off the carousel here. We're sitting and pumping all the way to level 7 here, which makes sense. We're going to preserve a little bit of HP, not like our boy's going to win. We could play Kayn here. I don't think it's really going to do anything in general, but it maybe helps us kill an extra unit. But we end up playing 6 Bruisers instead, which makes significantly more sense. And we slammed, seems like it's slammed the Spark instead of the BT as well, which seems fine. We do have Buried. We're probably guaranteed a Cloak, and maybe Spark kills a little bit more here than BT would. But Spark is great for the Silas, but we do really want a healing item eventually for our Kayn. We're going down all the way down to 34, and I believe we're cashing out here, and what do you know, we get more fucking components. So, like, honestly, like, this spot, like, I'm not gonna lie, I remember first watching this thinking, like, this spot's pretty fucking doomed, because we're on 6 Bruiser, right? But the beauty of 8 Bruiser is that it's fucking easy to hit. Like, you only need a Galio and a Silas, and once you have that and you have all the shitters, 8 Bruiser is really, really easy to hit, and suddenly your board spikes immensely, because 8 Bruiser is a humongous spike. So, as long as we go to level 8, and it doesn't really matter how much HP we have, just as long as we have, like, some level to work with, 8 Bruiser should be enough to, like, streak us for quite a long time. We actually hit this Set here as well, which is actually pretty interesting. I think Set is also a contender for potentially a strong Bruiser Crest holder, just because you have so much HP on the board, and he bench presses so much, that he could effectively actually gain a lot of AD if you just Bruiser Crest him on 8 and instead play around the Set. It is a bit risky though, because it's a lot easier to hit a Kayn 2 than it is to hit a set 2 on fucking 8. But even a set 1 is probably going to do a lot of fucking damage. It looks like we're zeroing out here because we're trying to look for the Galio, just trying to find that extra spike. But also things like a Kayn 2, things like, you know, whatever else we can put on our board just to stabilize. We are unfortunately missing on the Galio here, so we are stuck with this Titans red buff fucking set. It's not ideal by any means, but we are sitting on a Kayn pair. He does do something interesting here though, where Setsuko plays 2 Kayns instead of just teching in Reaper, which I think he had a Kha'Zix at a certain point, so it's kind of odd that he chose not to go with Reaper. But I'm interested to see if anybody has a take as to like why he chooses to play double Kayn. But to be honest, if you look at his fucking tracker on the top left, which you can't see but I can, this is like his 16th game of the stream. Actually, it's more than that. I think it's like close to his 20th, so he's tired. So quite honestly, I don't see a reason why. Like, I think he's just tired, to be honest. I think like if he's a little more brain on, I feel like he plays something else like a Kindred or like Kha'Zix in the back just for the Kayn, but I don't know. But anyways, moving on. Well fed, cyber uplink, and everything must go. Everything must go is the most broken augment in the fucking game as long as you have resources. But we just rolled down on 4-1. We have no resources to work with this augment, so everything must go. Unfortunately, must go. It is not a take in the spot. Well fed is fucking disgusting in vertical bruisers, so it's a very obvious take here. We do get the Kabuko 2 out of the augment, which is nice, but you might notice, by the way, just watch how many games, or rather fights, he starts streaking from. We're going to be donkey rolling here, just looking for the Galio here, but again, well fed is one of the best, if not the best augment you can get in this vertical line. So obviously, he did high roll just a little bit, but nonetheless, it's still very, very solid and still a game that we can learn something about and just gauge the power of this comp. It's definitely a hodge here for the Kayn as well, just because we do need a healing item on him. And he does end up going with the Titans on this Silas, which I'm not sure how I fully feel about. Titans on Silas is not necessarily that great. It's not like he uses the AD too hot, but he does use all the other stats very, very well. So it's not like it's that bad. There are definitely worse things that he could have taken here. Lux has 2 support items here, and we get a locket and a cleaver. But again, we are literally just donkey rolling for this fucking Galio. Like, we're just trying we're just trying to find this fucking Galio, man. Like, as soon as we hit Galio, we'll be super strong. But luckily enough, and fortunately enough, we're still streaking. Looks like it's gonna be a locket on the set. Not sure if I fully agree, just because we could still think about potentially bruiser cresting the set as well. But primary carrying a set for our damage is a little suspicious. So I can understand the hesitation as to not wanting to just sell the Kayn. Plus we're on Kayn pair. And like playing around this set. Obviously, like if bruiser set is like surprisingly super strong, I wouldn't be surprised. But it's one of those things that requires a lot of scaling. There's actually, funny enough, there's a fortune cash out that gives you like a set with, it's like a set 2 with like Radiant BT and like 2 dummies with both Radiant Warmogs. And the idea is that set will just bench press the fucking dummies and then just start gaining like infinite AD. The problem though is that cash out fucking sucks dick because it requires scaling. And like you're telling me you lost like 80, 90 HP just to cash out this bullshit. It's not ideal, to say the least. Like, I played it once, and that shit felt fucking terrible. Like, my set had like 400 AD, and I lost the fucking lucky pause. Like, what the fuck? But anyways, it looks like Setsuko is finally at 8 bruiser, and I think he's just like trying to debate whether or not he wants to keep the set. Funny enough, we have Locket on bench, Titans and Red Buff on bench. I think he's tired, to say the least. He's definitely tired. He's not piloting this game like 100% correctly, but I did want to showcase this game because I did think it was a really interesting line that I don't think enough people are experimenting with. But regardless, even though we're down a support item and 2 whole items, it seems like we're still winning the fight. I think Setsuko is just getting to the point here where it's like, it's just cognitive dissonance. He's like, I don't know what the fuck to do here. Like, do I keep the set? Do I not keep the set? I think it's close. But I think he's at this point where he's like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just not playing set anymore. He ends up selling it, which I think is the correct play. Locking the Rek'Sai here makes a lot of sense. Titans on probably Aatrox is fine. I do think we could go for a better item for our Silas. And he ends up red buffing the Riven, which I thought was really odd. I think red buff on Galio makes a lot more sense, just because Galio does have a bit more of an AoE effect with his ability. And I do believe his ability does like some level of damage. It's not a lot, but a little bit. So red buff on Galio definitely does make a little more sense in my opinion, but whatever. He sets going, I'm not. So you got the idea. Anyways, going into 4-8 here, and again, like, our board's super solid, and in case you haven't realized, as soon as we hit well-fed, we have been streaking ever since. So, again, well-fed, super fucking strong, but as you can see here, there's not much to really talk about. He's just fucking donkey rolling, looking for the Silas 2 and the Kayn 2, and then once he hits both, he can finally start pushing to 9. And the reason why he's... Oh, God. This is so bad. It's probably Hodge. It might be Rabadon's, actually. You get Omni-Van for well-fed. So, Rabadon's on Silas? Yeah, I can see it. So, interestingly enough, we are just donkey rolling on 8 until we find all our upgrades. And the reason being is because there's like nothing we want to tech in on 9. Like, what unit are you putting into your board on 9 that like really spikes your board, right? Naked Rakan 2, maybe. But that's fucking far. Rakan 2 is far. Irelia is really far. Like, it just makes more sense. It's more efficient to just keep rolling for the Silas 2. Because Silas 2 is going to be a huge fucking spike, right? Versus anything else we could find because it's just so far away. So, I actually like this play a lot of just, like, donkey rolling on 8 and just trying to find the Silas 2 before trying to go 9. It looks fucking brain dead, but to be completely honest, it's the correct play. It makes the most sense. And by the way, look at this Kayn. 4.9k damage. He's not doing, like, the most, but he's doing a solid job. He's doing a good job. Like, you can rely on Kayn. It's totally fine. Like, it looks great. And quite honestly, with Sterax as well, with so much HP, I really wish he'd right-click on the Kayn because I want to see how much HP it has. But still, very solid line. Still pumping out lots of, like, enough damage. And with all of the extra bruisers, especially with the Silas 2 now, we'll probably be cruising throughout the rest of Stage 5. So, it looks like, and again, it's very strong, but there are also people who are low rolling in this lobby, so just keep that in mind. T-Lights, for example, is also in this lobby. He's still stuck on a Kaisa 1. He just cannot burn through all of this extra HP. He's just basically getting stat checked by Setsuko. And if you scout out the lobby, you can see that not a lot of people actually have, like, the most strongest of boards. So just keep that in mind. This is definitely a low roll Punisher, but it's still nonetheless very, very strong and can still do well in a lot of scenarios. I think one guy actually has Yone 3, so it'd be interesting to see how this board fares against Yone 3. But I actually would put my money on this board winning against Yone 3, just because I think the stats are too much, and I don't think Yone is really good into boards with, like, a lot of HP to burn through. It just takes too long. He just doesn't have the damage ramp. But all right, looks like we'll find out. So it looks like this guy's actually, by the way, look at his augments. Double Gargantuan with Gigabist Yone, Grim Harvest, and like a Reaper Crown. And it's not even close. Like, he's actually getting fucking stat checked. Obviously, the dude's level 7 still, but it's not even fucking close, to be honest. Looks like Kamuli actually hits the... It looks like he's playing 6 Ghostly with Kaisa 2. Not necessarily a strong board, but it's decent for tempo, but it looks like he's bleeding out. So, it looks like our board is pretty much cruising. Everybody's now low HP. We have not lost. We're on an 8 streak, right? We're fighting the Kamuli, who is definitely going to lose to us. So, it looks like Setsuko is just watching this Rudier guy, because I think Rudier has, I believe, Everything Must Go, and then we're basically playing for second. Which kind of sucks, because, like, I feel like if this patch was, like, you know, if this augment was disabled, we'd be playing for first in the spot. But, unfortunately, because Everything Must Go exists, it's just how it is. Which, by the way, like, I know Riot is, like, super against, like, C-patching shit, but, like, can we all agree that, like, Everything Must Go, like, should be disabled? Like, it's just not balanced. I think as a Prismatic, it would honestly probably suck. Oh, I forgot, Pot of Gold. As a Prismatic, before I got interrupted by the gold, it would suck, but I feel like as a gold augment, it's just way too strong because you can just cap out with, like, legendaries or just 3-star 4 costs, and it just doesn't feel okay. Which, by the way, Everything Must Go in Pot of Gold just does not seem fair. The guy just hit, by the way, Rudier just hit Nautilus 3 and Annie 3, so we're playing for second, for sure now, which is just not okay. So, again, this augment, can't wait for it to get disabled. This patch fucking sucks with it online, but it is what it is. It looks like Bandit and Malala both actually end up going 3rd and 4th here, respectively. So, it looks like Setsuko is trying to hold every forecast he can and trying to look for a 3-star forecast for himself, something like a Galio 3, something like a Silas 3, but he's fighting into Annie 3, Lee Sin 3, Nautilus 3. It's just not even going to be close. By the way, I think he's 1 off Ornn 3. No, he's 2 off Ornn 3. He's 2 off Sindra 3. He's 2 off Lilia 3. No, sorry, he's 1 off Lilia 3. Like, this augment is so bad. Like, okay, like, it is what it is, man. Like, okay, you gotta admit, though, like, props to Riot for, like, experimenting with shit, but, like, come on, man. Like, this is terrible. Like, this is so bad. And what's worse is that Setsuko's selling his board, he can't even hit the fucking 3-star forecast. So, looks like he's playing into Ornn 3, Lee Sin 3, Annie 3, Nautilus 3, woohoo. Great fucking game, Riot. And by the way, this guy, he's still, like, he's still fucking, like, 20 gold left, so he could hit more. But anyways, that's basically gonna do it. Thank you guys for watching. I hope this was interesting. I hope you guys learned something with the 8 booster vertical, and see you guys next time. Take care, guys, and happy climbing.